The cold, damp air of a narrow alleyway was the first thing Lin Fan felt as he opened his eyes. For a man who had spent centuries as the supreme demon lord of the Xianmo continent, the sound of distant car horns and the smell of exhaust fumes were jarringly familiar yet impossible. He stood up, brushing the dust off his modern clothes he hadn't worn in hundreds of years. This was Blue Star. He was back. A few feet away, sprawled amidst the trash and shadows, lay a figure that didn't belong in this world. She wore ethereal, flowing robes of white and silver, her skin like polished jade, and her hair cascading like a river of silk. This was Empress Long Yu, the ruler of the Immortal realm and Lin Fan's most bitter rival. Just moments ago, they had been locked in a battle that threatened to shatter the heavens. Now, she lay unconscious in a pile of cardboard boxes. As Long Yue stirred, her eyes snapped open, glowing with a residual celestial light. Her first instinct was survival. She raised a hand, her fingers weaving the complex patterns of the immortal art, Radiant Moon Silver Dragon. She intended to erase the Demon Lord from existence right then and there. But as she called upon the laws of the universe, nothing happened. There was no surge of spiritual energy, no silver dragon, only the awkward silence of a dark alley. "Don't bother," Lin Fan said, leaning against a brick wall. "There is no spiritual energy here. On this world we are nothing more than mortals." Panic flared in Long Yue's eyes. She tried again, her breath hitching as she realized her internal dantian was like a dried-up well. She, the Empress who could move mountains with a thought, was now physically weaker than a common street thug. The sound of footsteps approached. 2 police officers entered the alley, flashlights cutting through the gloom. They had received a report of a suspicious man and a woman in cosplay acting strangely. "Is there a problem here?" one officer asked, his hand resting on his belt. Lin Fan's mind raced. If Long Yu spoke, she would sound like a lunatic from a historical drama, and they'd both end up in a psych ward or worse, a government lab. He stepped forward, putting on his best exhausted boyfriend face. "I'm so sorry, officer." Lin Fan sighed, pointing to his head. "My girlfriend, she's not quite right upstairs. She's got severe bipolar disorder and a bit of a delusion problem. She thinks she's an empress. I was just trying to get her home before her next episode." Long Ye's face turned a deep shade of crimson. "You dare! I am the—" Before she could finish, Lin Fan used the last flickering spark of his demonic soul, a tiny fragment of demonic sound, to vibrate the air near her ears. "Nod your head and shut up if you don't want to be locked in a cage," he whispered into her mind. Terrified by the sudden loss of autonomy and the stern look of the officers, the mighty Empress of the Immortal realm bit her lip and slowly, agonizingly, nodded her head. The walk to Lin Fan's apartment was a journey of silent fury. Long Yue followed him, her heavy robes dragging on the pavement, her eyes darting between the towering glass skyscrapers and the iron beasts with glowing eyes that roared past them on the streets. "This is your demon palace?" Long Yue asked as they stepped into a cramped 70-square-meter apartment. It was dusty, filled with cardboard boxes, and smelled faintly of old books. "It's my home," Lin Fan replied, tossing his keys on a table. "And for now, it's yours too. But there are rules in the mortal world, Long Yu. No work, no food. Since I'm providing the roof, you're providing the labor. Look at the dust on these floors. Start cleaning." Long Yue looked at the broom he handed her as if it were a poisonous snake. "You want me, the ruler of the 9 heavens, to sweep?" "The 9 heavens aren't here," Lin Fan reminded her. "The dust is." The following hours were a comedy of errors. Long Yu, who had never performed a day of manual labor in her life, struggled to understand the mechanics of a broom. She treated the dust like an enemy army, swinging the broom with such misplaced intensity that she only succeeded in kicking the particles into the air, causing herself a fit of coughing. By evening, a new sensation hit her, one she hadn't felt in 300 years. It started as a dull ache in her midsection, then grew into a sharp, demanding growl. "What is this? This internal vibration?" she asked, clutching her stomach. "Am I poisoned? Is the lack of spiritual energy causing my organs to collapse?" Lin Fan chuckled, opening a bag of takeout. "It's called hunger, Your Majesty. Your body needs fuel." He sat at the small wooden table and pulled out a box of fried chicken. The golden brown skin glistened under the fluorescent light, and the scent of spices and oil filled the room. Long Yue turned her nose up. I practice bigu. I do not consume the filth of the earth. Suit yourself, Lin Fan said, taking a loud, crunchy bite. More for me. Long Yue sat on the edge of the sofa, trying to meditate. But without mana, her mind couldn't block out the sensory assault. Every time Lin Fan crunched on a wing or let out a satisfied sigh, her stomach let out a roar that echoed through the quiet apartment. After 20 minutes, her pride finally shattered. She crept toward the table like a kitten, her eyes fixed on a drumstick. One piece, she whispered, to ensure my mortal shell does not perish. As the grease hit her tongue and the salt exploded in her mouth, Long Yue's eyes widened. She had eaten celestial peaches and drank dragon marrow wine, but this fried chicken possessed a primitive, addictive intensity that made her soul tremble. Before she knew it, the box was empty, and she was licking the crumbs off her fingers with a look of pure shock. But the physical toll of mortality didn't stop at hunger. As the clock struck midnight, Long Yue felt a heavy fog descending over her brain. Her eyelids felt like they were made of lead. I shall meditate through the night, she declared, sitting cross-legged on the floor. I do not require sleep. Your brain is a biological machine, Lin Fan warned, heading toward the bedroom. If you don't shut it down, it'll crash. Long Yue ignored him. She sat perfectly still, trying to find the void within, but her neck kept drooping, her head snapping back up every few seconds. By 3 a.m., the Empress of the Immortal Realm had officially fallen. Lin Fan walked out to find her slumped over on the floor, snoring softly, her face resting on a pile of laundry she was supposed to have folded. The next morning, the lesson in mortality continued with the delicacy of the mortal world. Lin Fan boiled water and poured it into a plastic cup filled with dried noodles and a sachet of red paste. What is this alchemical concoction? Long Yue asked, eyeing the steaming cup of instant noodles. It's the soul of the modern working class, Lin Fan replied. Long Yue took a sip of the broth. The spicy, chemical-laden heat hit her like a lightning bolt. It is incredible, she breathed, her dignity once again vanishing as she slurped the noodles with abandon. If this was sold in the Immortal Realm, sex would go to war over the recipe. The most difficult challenge, however, was the concept of the shower. Lin Fan had to explain the intricacies of the water heater and the various bottles of soap. Long Yu spent nearly an hour behind the closed door, screaming when the water was too cold and gasping when it turned hot. When she finally emerged, her hair damp and smelling of artificial lilies, she looked less like a fearsome empress and more like a confused, beautiful young woman lost in a world she didn't understand. The tension reached its peak on the third night. The apartment only had one bed. You expect me to share a sleeping platform with a demon? Long Yu hissed, standing in the doorway of the bedroom. It's a big bed, and it's cold, Lin Fan said, already under the covers. You can sleep on the floor again if you want, but your back is going to feel like it's been hit by a mountain-cleaving axe in the morning. Long Yue looked at the hard, cold floor and then at the soft, inviting duvet. With a huff of indignation, she climbed onto the very edge of the mattress, keeping as much distance between them as possible. They lay there in the dark, the sounds of the city humming outside the window. Two beings who had once commanded legions, now reduced to sharing a small bed in a tiny room. Lin Fan, she whispered into the darkness. Yeah? Don't think this changes anything. Once I find a way to restore my power, I will still execute you. Lin Fan smiled, closing his eyes. Good night, Your Majesty. Don't forget, tomorrow you're learning how to use the washing machine.